Okay.
Welcome to another Fred and John Talks. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing great today. How are you, John?
Good.
Good. Hello, everybody out there. And go ahead, John. Why don't you introduce?
I'm glad you're joining us again today. And this is going to be an interesting talk between Fred and I. It's about favorite topics and categories, and today's going to be about movies and why we like them, our favorite movies and why. And Fred's going to expound on one of his favorite movies, and I'm going to make other commentary on it. We think you'll find this interesting, as we may do other categories as well. But today it's about movies, and what is your favorite movie, Fred?
Okay. All right. Just before that, let me piggyback on what John just said. What we have in mind is a series, not necessarily in chronological order, but we have a series that we can do so many videos on. What are your favorites and why? And as he said, today we're looking at movies, but there's a lot of other topics, books, and so on and so forth. Your favorite athlete, your favorite actor and actress. So we hope you watch. We hope that you will give feedback not only about what we talked about, but about some of your favorites. When you watch the videos, mention some of your favorites. And of course, as always, if you like what you're seeing and hearing, send a like, subscribe to our channel.
Spread the word.
Spread the word, and
Yes.
we would be very, very grateful for that. So, at the top of my list of favorite movies is The Wizard of Oz.
No way.
Why do you say that?
I'm a Kansas boy.
Oh, he's from Kansas. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Toto. That's right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so first of all, I just want to make the comment that when that movie first came out, I've read articles. I wasn't alive in 1939. I think that film was made.
Late 30s. Before I was born too.
Okay. When that movie first came out, it was panned. It was, I remember even reading, statements from some of the critics like, who wants to watch a chubby little girl, with a bunch of midgets? And I mean, they really panned it. And so much for the critics, because that became one of the all-time classic movies.
Absolutely.
So here's a few reflections on the movie The Wizard of Oz, and I like to say kind of a psychology of the movie or a philosophy of the movie. Both of the phrases fit. I hope you'll see that as I talk about it. Because consider the characters. So you have the Scarecrow, who says he has no brain, and he needs one. And
that would be me.
No, it would not. And of course, he encounters Dorothy and tells her that and everything. But if you watch and listen carefully as the movie progresses, when they get into a fix, who's the one who comes up with the brainstorm and the idea for how to get out of it? The Scarecrow.
The least likely.
The least likely. The one who says he doesn't have a brain. Then they encounter the Tin Man, and he says he doesn't have a heart, and he's in search of a heart. Well, who in that movie cries the easiest? Who has a voice? Pay attention to the voice, the tenor of his voice, the compassion in his voice, the sweetness of his personality, the what I call being a tender heart. And he claims he doesn't have a heart. Then you have the Cowardly Lion. And yes, throughout the movie, he's quaking with fear over just about everything. But when push comes to shove, and he needs to act with courage, he plays a big role in the destruction of the Wicked Witch of the West.
He shows you strength. Eventually, he shows his strength. That's right.
He shows you a courage that he thought he didn't have.
Right.
And then we have, last but not least, Dorothy. And it's not clear. It's not spelled out as exactly as with the other three characters what she's looking for, but we know from the beginning of the movie that she runs away from home because she doesn't want her dog, if I remember correctly, if she doesn't want her dog Toto taken away by that wicked neighbor, that mean neighbor, yeah. Anyway, toward the end of the movie, Dorothy is asked, through all her adventures and the Munchkins and this and that and the wicked witch, the good witch, she's asked, what did you learn, Dorothy? And she says, well, probably the main thing is that if I ever go in search of my heart's desire again, I won't look any farther than my own backyard.
I like that phrase.
Beautiful phrase.
Yeah, I mean, being a Kansas boy, I grew up in Kansas where cornfields, simplicity, you play with your neighbors. It's all about relationships and small communities. And this was an interesting community of individuals who you wouldn't have thought would have any sort of connection, but speak to how together collectively, how powerful they were. The Tin Man, the Scarecrow.
You nailed it again, John. You have a tendency to do that,
From time to time.
So, what do we have to learn from all this? John just mentioned one, but there's two things I'd like to point out as we wind down with this episode. And one of them goes back to our introductory session where we say we're doing this. This Fred and John Talks, which was John's idea, was born of the idea of our deep-seated belief in the absolute importance, the critical importance for life to have close friendships, close social ties. And speaking of ties, this ties back into our episode on loneliness, which we are going to do follow-up episodes about loneliness and go deeper into the subject of friendships. And these four people, the three characters and Dorothy, there was strength in numbers. What they couldn't find on their own, they found by banding together. The most unlikely, what they call a motley crew of people band together and conquer, in a sense, evil. Because there are themes of good and evil in here. The Wicked Witch of the West, the Wicked Witch of the East, the Good Witch of the North, and so on.
Don't forget the theme of a person and their dog. The little girl and her dog.
Didn't even cross my mind.
How important is it to have a dog in the family or to grow up with a dog? And how protective she was of her dog.
John, you're brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that bleeds into the subject, which we won't go into now at any great length, but what do they call man's best friend?
That's right.
Dogs.
Dogs.
Yes. And that may come up in a future video. But the second and last thing I wanted to point out, based on the psychology of the Wizard of Oz, is how often people do not recognize in themselves the gifts that they have. They have blind spots. As I've mentioned many times, I've worked in the field of psychology for a long time. I have clients who don't see in themselves some great gifts. Human beings, unfortunately, and I don't know why this is, except to look at it from a religious point of view, ever since the fall, human beings tend to focus on their shortcomings,
Yes.
their weaknesses,
Self-critical.
what they did wrong, their mistakes.
Yes.
In religious circles, their sins. And I want to close by quoting one of my favorite Christian psychologists who's written quite a few books, fabulous books. His name is John Eldredge. His last name is spelled Eldredge. My favorite book of his is, I'm going to forget the title now. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Forgive me. Let me do the quote and then I think I'll remember the name of the book. I wasn't prepared for this because this is spontaneous. In one of his books, he makes a powerful statement. He was down in the dumps. Even as a Christian, he was down on himself. He was very self-critical of himself as a husband and as a father. And then he said this: I started to come out of it when I realized that I had forgotten that my heart was good. Now let me say a word about that, and then close, and hopefully, God, if he'll give me an assist here, he's written so many books, I'm drawing a blank on my favorite. Now that statement, I had forgotten that my heart is good, flies in the face of the verse from Jeremiah that says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can understand it? That flies in the face of that verse, but let's not forget that that's after the fall of mankind in the biblical narrative.
Jeremiah.
Before the fall, when the story of creation, God created this, that, and the other thing, and every time he created something else, he said,
and it's good.
And he saw that it was very good. And then the pinnacle of his creation, the high point, was his creation of man. And we were created in the image of likeness of God, and our hearts were good. So I think I'm going to have to close out there. I remember the name of my favorite book. It's called Wild at Heart. It is a book about, and it's even subtitled, understanding the masculine, understanding masculine spirituality. God's design for masculine spirituality. Thank you, up there. Thank you, the universe. Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. I include all Christian men to read it, and I even encourage their girlfriends and wives to read it to understand the masculine soul. And I'll let John wrap up for today. Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Thank you for watching.